Hey, if you've ever listened to our show and thought to yourself, I think I want to make a podcast, but I don't know where to start, start with Anchor. Anchor is a platform that has all the tools you need to record and edit your podcast, right from your phone or computer. Using Anchor allows you to distribute your show to platforms such as Spotify, Apple, Google, and so many others. The best part is that it's totally free. So if you want to get started, you can download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm. What's up, nerds? Welcome to episode 26 of the Bandwagon Band. This is the show where we talk about all things pop culture. I'm Josh.
I'm AJ.
I'm Alex.
This week, we're going to go over the latest in current events, and we're going to talk about some of the things that we're into as well. Starting things off with The Witcher 3.
Hey.
I didn't ask how you guys were. It's not that I don't care. I just didn't think about it.
About The Witcher?
Wait, The Witcher or about how I care?
How about you guys?
I
Usually I see how you see, like, how's everyone doing?
No, you just want to ask how The Witcher's doing. And I was waiting for a response. I was like, is he here? Like, is he on our podcast right now? I was like,
yes.
Henry Cavill, ladies and gentlemen.
Is this a celebrity invite right now?
He took a break from painting his Warhammer figures to join us because he's a nerd.
Nice.
Yeah, he's a big nerd. Alex, how have you been, Alex?
I've been good. I skateboarded by the beach today for way longer than I thought. I just it's one of those things sometimes when you skate you just kind of zone out and you don't realize how far you went until I turned around when I was already tired. I was like, I've went about 5 miles one direction, and I was skating through Venice, California, not Venice, Italy, and it was very sandy and very windy, but it's perfect skate weather outside of that. Can't complain.
Oh, you poor child living in California where the
I know
weather
it was
so
cold.
brutal.
It was cold for LA today. It was 70. People are like, this is gross.
That's horrendous.
I know. What is it in Chicago right now? 3 degrees?
It's 60. I went to the Cubs game yesterday, and I was like, oh, it's gonna be kind of hot. I was kind of afraid. I just wore my T-shirt, and my Fit for a King windbreaker. I was like, I should be okay. Nice. It was kind of cold, man. It was maybe 60 tops. I think it was in the 50s. But happy birthday to Shay. You probably don't listen to the show, but that's why I was at the Cubs game.
Happy birthday, Shay. Anyone else have any good weather reports this weekend?
How's the weather over yonder in the east?
How about some bad weather reports? It was 92 degrees today and yesterday. That's Saturday and Sunday. It has been balls dripping hot here in New York and disgusting.
You don't know balls dripping hot until you sit in the sun.
That's Pate's getting canceled.
That's the temperature. That's the temperature here on the reg. Okay, that is just Texas. That's just Texas. That's just regular.
My brain totally had a fuzz moment and was like, "You live in Chicago. What are you talking about?"
Yeah, Chicago.
I left that life behind me.
And now you're a proud Texan, and you take pride in your awful.
Yeah,
awful weather.
I got my cowboy hat here somewhere. True story. Josh, you went to the Cubs game yesterday.
Yeah.
There was a young lady who sang the national anthem. Correct.
Yeah. I have no idea actually.
That's Tyler's friend. Tyler was at the Cubs game as well. My younger brother. Yeah, his friend. He was there with his friend. She sang the national anthem. She did a good job. So
cheers to Tyler.
And also
and his friend.
Yeah. And also shout out to my brother. He's taking the MCAT this week. So good luck, bro. And if you fail, don't show up to family events. Don't make an appearance. You're gonna get disowned. So a lot's riding on this.
Well, you know what? If he fails, he's going to just be able to play Witcher 3 Complete Edition, which is coming to.
He have a lot of time. Yeah,
I had to
all the time.
Try to segue that. I thought it was
so smooth. We almost didn't notice. Have you guys all played The Witcher, by the way?
I played The Witcher 1 and 2 for about. I played The Witcher 1 for 10 minutes. And I was like, these graphics are horrible, and I stopped. And then I played The Witcher 2, did the first boss fight. This is 5 or I don't know, it was probably 8 years ago. I didn't do it asked me if I wanted to prep for the fight, and I was like, no, I'm good. I got hit one time by this monster squid thing, and it killed me instantly, and I just uninstalled the game and never touched it again.
That's how that goes, man.
Yeah.
When did The Witcher 3 first come out?
It's been
2015,
a
I
minute.
think.
It's been a minute.
I think it's
Fun
2015.
fact,
What console do you remember?
I'm not sure. All
Was
I
it
know is I
360?
haven't beaten
360?
it.
360? Okay, so
Or
I've had
Xbox?
it. I've had it since the 360 days, and I only beat it when the first season of The Witcher came out. So
Nice.
essentially what happened is that every time I had the energy to play it, I would get to like the very first boss, similar to Alex. It's a giant bird, and he does some major damage, and I would get really mad, and I would just be like, "This game sucks," and then I didn't play it. And once I finally sat down and played through it, it was amazing. But it does require like a lot of like what is like learning like the world of Witcher, and the game doesn't do a good job of explaining what happened in other games. So I'm
Yeah.
just like, who's this guy? They seem pretty important.
Yeah.
I
This
just don't
person
have the
also
patience.
seems pretty important. Yeah, neither did I, but I'm glad I did. The story's really good, and I'm glad I was able to finally like hunker down and make it through that first like 2-hour block of just learning a new game, because that's really
Yeah. Struggling to survive.
For people out there that have never heard of The Witcher, to my knowledge, it was like the big rival to Skyrim when this game came out. Like this was like the next huge like RPG game that I just remember like I was in college when it dropped, and everyone wouldn't shut up about this game. And I think this shows how successful The Witcher has became, since they're already like like relaunching further editions years down the road. Never played The Witcher 3, but just wanted to give a little context. It's like what you've got the Netflix show, you've got complete edition. Like what's the next on the Witcher list? Are they still making books? It started as a book series, didn't it?
Yeah, back in
I
like
think.
the 80s or 90s, I
so
think.
yeah. It started off as a book series. The then founders of CD Projekt Red went to the writer and they said, "Hey, we would love to make your books a video game. Can we have the rights?" And instead of doing what any sane person would do and demand a piece of royalties, he said he just sold it for $50,000 because, and his own quote, "Video games are stupid." Fast forward many years later, and he tried to sue CD Projekt Red because he claimed that they took advantage of him, which they then said, "We have this documentation
receipts,
of you saying,
yeah,
not only did you sell us the rights for $50,000, but you didn't care. You're only mad because the game is like almost $1 billion franchise now."
Yeah.
So lesson in that, ladies and gentlemen, if you make something, make sure you get a piece of ownership.
And also sell it to a video game company as soon as possible.
Yes, as soon as humanly possible. Yeah.
And whatever you think is stupid is probably going to be successful.
It's probably going to be really successful. Josh, you said this is coming to the next gen, right?
Yeah, and I know you play PC, so is this going to affect you at all?
Hey, I have an Xbox, bro.
Okay.
It collects a lot of dust,
yeah,
but I still have my Xbox Series
You mean your
S.
fridge?
Yeah, my mini fridge. I think Alex said something earlier I thought it was funny. He said that this kind of shows how prolific the game is. I look at it in a different way. I just think it's really lazy. I think we've come to this point in video games where The Witcher 3 came out on the Xbox 360.
I did check Xbox One or whatever the
Xbox One. Okay,
whatever the one was before. I don't play Xbox anymore.
It's still been a while, and
it's still been a minute.
It's like 2013, whatever that thing came out.
This is the trend we're seeing.
This is the trend where instead of making a new game, they're like, guys, do you want to see this game in 60 frames per second? Even though you could already do that before, but now we're advertising it. It's the same thing that Rockstar is doing with Grand Theft Auto. I just think it's lazy. I just think I would rather you just port it and call it a day than try to rebrand it for what I'm going to assume is anywhere between $40 and $60. I just hate that. It's just laziness. It's literal laziness.
Stop spending your money, people, and they'll stop doing this.
That's showbiz for you, man.
I guess that's the moral of the story. Speaking of show business, anyone here watch Saturday Night Live, like current Saturday Night Live?
Not really. No.
I'm under the age of 30, so no.
That
is a huge.
Wait, you're not 30?
Excuse me. No, I'm not 30. Okay.
How old are you?
I'm a kid at heart, baby. Toys R Us. I'm a Toys R Us kid.
AJ's 23 and a
I'm
half.
29. I'm 29.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But either way, like SNL has been. I feel like it's like SNL was huge for decades and decades, and it isn't really like anything new that less people have been watching this over the years, and it's kind of like fallen apart because I think they have tried to just cater to too many audiences. Where I just feel like SNL just doesn't really like stick anymore. There's like sometimes funny skits, but it's rare that like the entire show is hilarious.
Yeah.
And we just announced that a few cast members are leaving, and I don't know. I'm just like, is this done? Like, we've got Kate McKinnon, Pete Davidson, Kyle Mooney, and Adie Bryant. Like, all of them are leaving. Isn't that SNL right there? Like, I think that's the whole cast. Like, outside of like
they've
a couple
done this
members.
before though.
Yeah, they've
I,
gone through this
I've
before.
There's a niche of YouTube, like a history videos that I watch a lot of, and they covered how it was like back in the 80s or 90s. It was like the best. It's already like one of the best seasons of SNL,
Mhm.
and then they ended up like firing everybody on the cast. And it's like big people, like Adam Sandler was on there, and a bunch of other
But these
people.
people didn't get fired. They left, and like 80s and
Right,
90s was
right,
like during its prime. I think the difference
yeah,
now is like nobody's watching it.
that,
Like,
I think
yeah,
also all those people you just named, Alex, are like the only people who are kind of nameable, whose name is maybe a household name or at least recognizable.
mhm.
Everybody else who's left on the show who is not in that list you just read, I don't even know their name. So
right.
that's saying something.
I wonder like
Well,
if they'll pivot to like get quote unquote influencers on to SNL, like if they're gonna
I
start
can.
moving
I
towards that
hope not.
direction.
Well, I think I personally always enjoyed Mad TV more than I ever enjoyed SNL. I just don't think SNL is very engaging. I just feel like the format of improv, sitting like, it's more fun for the people doing the improv than it is for the audience. And I feel like it's like they're all telling each other an inside joke that we aren't privy to. And that's kind of just what I always feel. I've always said like the funniest skits that come out of SNL are the pre-recorded skits because someone actually can sit down and write the skit out. You know what I mean?
Huh. Yeah, I don't really watch it live, but I do sometimes watch clips of it. And like, and I think that's just the way technology is, how it impacts our media, where yeah, the format just doesn't seem to work as well as it used
Well, I
to,
think the
which
writing
is
quality
fine.
is
Things need to
just the
change.
writing quality is just lower as well, and it's just like
Yeah.
I feel like we're past a time of like getting all these all-star members. Like, I feel like this might be the last era of like finding, like the next Pete Davidson, because I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel like a lot of comedians don't view like SNL as like the staple to like make it into comedy anymore. And I think that's another reason why a lot of it's lacking is like you don't need SNL to be like to survive. You
Yeah,
used
to
to.
survive. Yeah. I mean, I don't even. I mean, I'll be honest with you guys. I don't even think Pete Davidson's a great actor or comedian. I think he's probably better than I think what's there on the cast. But I don't really think, like, if you compare Pete Davidson to other all stars from the SNL era, I mean, it kind of lacks in comparison. That's
But he's probably the most recent, I mean, the most popular one recently. And like, it might even not even, I don't think he's as popular for his sketches. He's just popular for being Pete Davidson, which is
I think
kind
he's
of
also
I
interesting.
think
popular
so.
for
Yeah,
dating Kim Kardashian. So,
Yeah, that
that
too.
helps too.
and then the joke of like, how does this guy who is maybe not hot literally has dated actually a lot of other famous, beautiful women too?
yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't Thank You Next written about him or like some of that.
Him and Mac Miller, I think.
Mhm.
I don't think she
Maybe.
disses Mac Miller because he died, and I don't think.
No,
I don't think
I don't think it was meant as a diss either, though. I think she just said she learned something
she learned something from each
from
relationship.
each relationship that she's
Mhm.
been in. I never looked at it as like a diss either. I just think that it was like it was her saying that like we both had like each person she's referencing. It's like we both had problems, and now I'm moving on. That kind
Yeah,
of thing. So yeah,
I think it's just like a change, and like the world's changing. Like the way people consume their media changes, what they're interested in changes. There's always like the nostalgia factor, though. I would venture a guess that like I don't know, 20 years from now, the SNL format will be like cool again. but I don't know.
We'll see.
It's
We'll see.
20. It's,
This
I was gonna say, that's
nostalgia
not
is
going to
always,
be around in 20 years.
I don't know, man.
Who knows?
Maybe it would be something new. There's always like there's the nostalgia like of stuff coming back. Like for instance, Stranger Things. There's a lot of
Hey.
people who have that nostalgia factor that draws them to it. They're like, oh, the '80s, it's so cool, blah blah blah, and it's a good show. That's the other thing.
I like it, but I
Season
can't
4
believe we're on season 4 already.
This is
I mean,
the last season.
that would
it is
explain
season.
their weird format. So like,
Yes.
I don't think everyone knows, but like, so I didn't realize season 4 of Stranger Things was the last season. But there's 7 episodes of part 1 of season 4, and then they're having 2 additional episodes released at a later time. But the next 2 episodes are like
July.
hours and hours long. It said one of the episodes is 2.5 hours long, so it's basically like a mini TV show tied in with 2 movies.
With some movies.
I'm just like, you guys better write an amazing show, amazing season, because that is a lot of attention to demand.
I will say that whether this is their last season or it does get picked up for another season, that like, I will say that I think this is where Netflix's strength is, that they can do that they're not tied to this like bottled formula of like, we have to do this 45-minute show or this hour show for each episode. I think that's nice. I think that, you know, if the show is so prolific that, you know, this is where they're trying to lead the show to something new or whatever. And if the last 2 episodes are 4 hours, I think everybody will be there for that.
And why not? Like, I'm kind of on board with that. Like, if the writing quality is good and they feel confident that they can like release long episodes, then I'm okay with it. I thought season 2 was really, really poorly written, and then I thought season 3
Me too.
like, kind of saved itself. So
yeah,
I'm like,
season
I'm
2 was so boring for me. I
think they just got
what is
rushed.
happening?
I feel like they got I feel like Netflix just made them like write season 2 quicker than they wanted, and then they got like a little, because there was a delay with season 3 coming out. I feel like they took their time.
Well, for our listeners, I've been watching a lot of movies again lately. It's something that I think I maybe mentioned before, but I just went through this like long period where I just didn't really want to watch any movies, and now I'm just finding fun in watching movies again. And I watched 2 movies: Firestarter, which is a remake of a '80s movie, and I also watched Akira for the first time. And I'm like, it's really strange how much these movies lean on a lot of things from Stranger Things. I never really like. I'm wondering, like, are these things? Is that where they kind of pulled a lot of concepts from Stranger Things from, and then they kind of just threw in that '80s veneer to it? Because there's a lot of very similar themes between both of those movies that I thought was kind of cool. Of course, Stranger Things does its own thing with like, you know, the upside down stuff, but at its core, this idea of like a facility with children with telekinetic powers and stuff like that, it was cool. I was like, I'm wondering if they borrowed from that, because I wouldn't be surprised if they did.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's always interesting to see like what ideas come from where.
Yeah.
Be it Stranger Things, or obviously like with something like Disney, they have all these IPs they've acquired like from Marvel to be cranking out these shows. She-Hulk trailer is out.
It's bad,
thoughts on that,
ladies and gentlemen. I already knew going in that this was going to be bad, but I watched it. I actually couldn't finish. I couldn't finish the 2-minute trailer. I got like a minute in. I was like, "It's the worst CGI I've ever seen." This just doesn't. You know, I've never read She-Hulk comics. Maybe the 80s and 90s comics were fun. So like, I'm not even going to talk about that because I have no experience with it. But this trailer specifically just looked terrible. I don't know why this show is a thing. Well, I mean, I know why it is, because they want us to watch things, but
right.
Here we are talking about it.
Yeah, I don't know like what the influences are going to be on this, so that'll be interesting to see. And yeah, with the CGI, granted, like we have a lot of time between now and the actual show releasing. But then I saw this thing. I don't know if it's true or not, but it would not surprise me that allegedly they had She-Hulk like a lot bigger and like muscular looking, and then the like executives are like, no.
I heard this too. They wanted her. They wanted her to look more feminine. If that makes sense.
I say, boo! Give us muscle women.
Well,
that's what the public wants.
You guys hear me say this all the time. You know, when we're watching a movie or reading a book or whatever, like I just want to know, who is this made for? Because I feel like if the director or the writers, if they have that answer, then the show can reflect that it could if they have that question answered, then the show can reflect that pretty well. You know, we want our women big. We want death by snoo snoo. That's a deep cut. If anyone ever watched Futurama, we want death by snoo snoo.
Dude,
so
that
are
was
you
all
giving?
Over Twitter.
Yeah. So are we getting death by snoo snoo? Or are we just getting some very uncanny valley style? What's the green giant on the bag of peas? Like,
Jolly Green Giant.
Jolly, yeah, it looks like the Jolly Green Giant's like wife. It's very weird.
This is in the name of what Sir Mix-a-Lot. You want them thick and juicy, so make that juicy double. Just try to remember the line.
And Disney said no.
I've never read She-Hulk, but I thought She-Hulk was an adult comic book, and then seeing this is like this weird, like, I won't even say it's a kids trailer. It's like,
it's that in between. We talked about this. They don't have a clear identity.
They won't commit. They won't commit to a theme. It's my same concern with Daredevil, because it's like,
that's what
you know, they announced Daredevil, but I'm like, you have to commit, because Marvel's Daredevil, we could talk a lot of crap about Marvel, but they did the Marvel universe justice with their TV shows.
And with Moon Knight, Kevin Feige was like, "Oh, it's gonna be so dark and gritty. We're not holding back."
Yeah, right.
Like, it's like, dude,
dark and gritty, like the way it was filmed. That's what they meant by that.
The approach that they go with this Daredevil show.
Yeah,
it's people will riot.
Yeah,
I kid you not.
Disney has to commit. They have to commit and say, like, this is for kids. This is not for kids, and they have to be like okay with it. You bought properties that transcend a lot of ages. You cannot expect to be Switzerland for the rest of your life and then expect everybody to be happy like that. You know, you got to pick a side.
You know what? I got an idea. How about we take She-Hulk, we bring her on SNL now that a bunch of cast members have left, and we just roll with it. Let's just see what happens. I think I would be okay just seeing CGI She-Hulk just on SNL. Just I know.
Yeah,
why not?
Even then, I mean, you guys brought up the CGI. I think it's one of those things where if the CGI was going to be this bad and be yet such a pivotal point of the series, like who are you making this for then? Like just get a big female actress. Go to a strong woman competition, pick any of those women and put green on them. That would look more realistic, and it would make more sense. Like this whole, I don't know. It's just weird. It's just
the
weird.
Casting is interesting, especially since apparently the main actress of She-Hulk, she's from the show Orphan Black.
Okay, and then the last thing I have to say is I need to put TikTok a little bit on blast. Our social media coordinator, Natalia, made a thirst trap video about Nightwing because he's a thirst trap, and they flagged it for like adult content, and it wasn't that bad. So
yeah, it's kind of weird
out there.
I don't really get it. TikTok is really finicky about what they
wasn't it just like pictures of a shirtless guy? Like
yeah.
How is that adult content?
Like, commit to something, and then like there's some pretty crazy stuff on TikTok too. Like I don't use the app too much, but just scrolling through it a couple times, I was like, so this is on here, but our stuff can't be.
They had this whole issue where they were having people, I'm not going to get too graphic about this, but they were having people on lives basically doing the deed while reading a book, but you couldn't see, you could just them reading a book. It's pretty crazy. So just to say that was permitted for months, but a comic image of somebody, you know, that's just.
Well, also I've reported like bullying and like racial slurs before, and TikTok has messaged my account back saying that we didn't see anything wrong with this, and then kept the comments up. So
that's
TikTok,
the world we live in, man.
You know what, TikTok? I don't care if this makes this episode explicit. Figure your shit out.
Dang, dude.
Put him on
blast. All out. You just made Alex say a naughty word.
I said a naughty word, TikTok.
Oh no.
Put him on blast.
All right, moving on though. I'm doing a first for myself on the show. I'm gonna be talking about a novel today.
Is this your first book you've ever read?
In my whole life.
Wow. Let's all give Joshua a round of applause.
I definitely don't have a couple hundred books in a storage unit right now.
Well, yeah, they're in storage, so you never read them. Yeah.
Exactly.
All
Yeah.
right.
I'm going to be talking about I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter by Erika Sánchez. And fun tidbit, I got to meet her at this event from the Ragdale Foundation, which the only reason I got to go was because of work.
Hmm.
And when I say I met her, I mean I briefly spoke to her very awkwardly and then had her sign my book.
Hey, it counts.
It counts. And she's also from Chicago, so that was cool. It was a Chicago writers event. So shout out to the Ragdale Foundation for allowing people from my school to go for free because I think the tickets were like $150.
Dang.
So pretty cool on their part. Just a little background on the author. She's an American poet and writer. Her parents are Mexican immigrants. She's from Cicero, and she graduated magna cum laude from UIC. So very much a Chicago girl, a very smart Chicago girl. She also has her master's in poetry from the University of New Mexico. And I don't know if it's current, but at some point or another, she was a professor at DePaul.
Oh, for
So,
those who don't know, DePaul is another big college downtown Chicago. So
yeah, so very proud Chicagoan here. And yeah, her book was great. I'm going to start out by saying that I think this is a book that everybody should read. There's something to get out of it. And I'm just going to go over some of the plot points. I'm not going to give you the whole book because I want people to check this out. That's how much I enjoyed this.
wow.
And the premise is it's about this girl named Julia who it starts off, she's at her sister's funeral staring at her dead sister in the casket. So that's how it starts. And it gets worse. Her older sister Olga, was hit by a bus while crossing the street because she was looking at her phone.
Wow.
Which
This sounds
I don't know about you
that's
guys.
very
intense.
sad, dude.
That's the opening.
That's the opening. She's at her sister's funeral,
Does it
looking down at her sister.
Real
Is this
quick
like
question.
That's
I
where
was
we
gonna
started.
ask Josh, is this a graphic novel or is this a like print, like words?
Like prose, is that the word? I should know this,
Prose?
but I don't.
Okay.
It's a novel, like written there. Yeah, there's no
Oh,
pictures.
retro.
Okay.
Yeah, OG. But yeah, so how relatable. She got hit by a car because she was looking at her phone while crossing the street.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And Olga, her older sister, was like the quote unquote perfect Mexican daughter. She was, like obedient, always spent time with her family, like didn't challenge authority. There's like a lot of cultural things behind this. Whereas Julia is independent, she's spirited, she's very tenacious. She's a 15-year-old, she's a Latina, but she's like she was born in the U.S., so she's very American, and she's not the quote unquote perfect Mexican daughter. And after Olga's death, her mom, she calls her Ama, wants to have a quinceañera for Julia, the main character, even though she already turned 15. Have you guys ever been to a quinceañera before?
No,
I haven't.
unfortunately. Daniela didn't have
AJ, you haven't?
Daniela didn't have one, so I never got to go to
They
one.
happen at
Yeah,
15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never.
When a girl turns 15.
So when my daughter is gonna have the most wild quinceañera ever, dude. It's gonna be wild. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, my sister, I think in a year or two, she's 14, 13. But yeah, so like if you guys haven't been to one, it's legit. It's pretty crazy, man.
Yeah.
But Julia is not about that life. She's like, this is dumb. It's a waste of money. I don't want to wear a frilly dress and do all this weird dancing. And the other thing is she feels like her mom's doing this because she feels guilty that Olga never had a quinceañera. Their family's really poor, and so they couldn't really afford to have one. And so Julia's like, you're only doing this because you feel bad that my sister didn't get one. Which, again, like, imagine like having something, your parents gave you something because like your older sibling didn't get it, and now they're dead.
Yeah.
It's just like, that's
a lot of weight.
It's
a lot
intense,
of weight
man.
Yeah, that's heavy.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're a poor family living in Chicago, which for me, like, I'm not a poor person living in Chicago, but I know what that looks like. Like I've seen that. Like I've been like in those neighborhoods before. So having this set in Chicago and me living in the Chicago area, like it hits home in a different way. It was really cool. And the family, they all cope with the death in a different way. Her parents become even more distant, and her father has always kind of been a shadow of a person, which not like it's not meant to be stereotypical, I don't think, but is very typical, not just of like immigrant families, but also like Mexican fathers. Like they're kind of like the silent. I work hard, I provide, but like I'm not here for your personal problems.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, like I get that. Like I've seen that from like my dad's side of the family. Like people have to work really hard. I don't know, AJ. Like if
Daniela
you
tells
have
me,
seen that,
yeah, Daniela tells me that same exact thing, that her father, I mean, hell, her father came here by himself, right? Before, um, came here by himself to essentially bring Daniela and her mother and their siblings over here. So that's definitely on par for what it's like to be in a Mexican family.
yeah, and like not just that, but like the immigration experience, they're undocumented, so like that's a whole other level to it, where not only are they going to a new place, it's scary, they're trying to survive, but then like they're not there legally, like they don't have their papers, and
Yeah.
that's just like a whole another level of tension. And so what Julia does is her parents are very withdrawn, and she decides like she didn't really know her sister that well either. She really loved her sister, but she felt like there was always just something very like she didn't know her the way she wanted to. So she goes into her room and starts exploring a little bit. Who are you guys? Like, what order are you guys in your family? I think AJ, you're the oldest.
Yeah, I'm the oldest. I'm the favorite.
I'm the
Yeah.
second oldest, but,
Okay.
but yeah,
Are you the favorite?
Did,
me?
Yeah.
No, I don't know.
No.
Well, I
my
guess,
mom and
yeah,
dad, my
yeah.
mom and dad, my mom and dad get very mad when I say that. They're like, "We don't have favorites." I'm like,
I don't
"No,
know.
you got to say that to appease everybody else."
I'm the
yeah.
non-sassy one, if that counts. So
Uh, I get AJ. Like, did Tyler ever go into your room when he wasn't supposed to? Or Alex, did you ever go into someone's room when you weren't supposed to?
Tyler, my brother did all the time. I mean,
we
heck,
just,
yeah,
I grew up like half my life I just shared a room, so it's like it was already
you had
my
no
room.
choice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because yeah, so she goes into her sister's room. I feel like that's something like people can probably relate to that to some extent or another. Like, yeah, I used to do that, or yeah, my sibling used to do that.
Especially when you get older and you want that to be your space. And like
Yes.
I don't know about you guys, but the age difference between my brother and myself is it's 6 years.
Yeah.
So growing up, I'm like, I don't want my little brother in my room,
Yeah.
and it's like, get out, dude, So hey, I don't even want him in my house, and we're older now. No, I'm just kidding. I love you, Tyler.
So she goes into her sister's room, and she's kind of rummaging around, and she ends up finding lingerie and a hotel key,
Oh,
which is a stark contrast to what she expects to find, because her sister is like the golden child, like didn't do anything wrong, followed the rules, and so she finds this stuff, and it sets Julia on this quest to essentially like find out who her sister really was. And so she keeps trying to go through her life. She's 15, she's in high school trying to make it through. And you can tell like there's definitely deep depression and anxiety there. And like there's hints that like she's doing worse than even she realizes.
Hmm.
And like I don't know, like if you guys have ever experienced that or seen someone who's going through that, like, sometimes it just sneaks up on you and you don't realize it.
that
And it's made
is,
worse
yeah,
because her family is so poor.
yeah,
Like economic hardships add a whole new stressor to people, especially being a teenager is hard.
yeah,
And adding the fact that her sister just died and her family's poor, like she's just going through a lot of stuff. And another thing that I think is very relatable, especially like for this immigrant experience, she blames her parents. She's like, "We're poor, and that's your guys' fault," without fully realizing like how hard it's actually been for her parents to have come to the U.S. to be undocumented and to try to create a life. And so at home, there's a lot of tension. At school, she's very outspoken, but she's intelligent. Like she's not
yeah,
just there trying to cause problems. She excels at English. She wants to become a writer. And her best friend, Lorena, is also very intelligent, and also poor. And she kind of copes with it by using her sexuality. So like where Julia is like very studious, likes to read. Her friend Lorena likes to go to party, likes to like sleep around a lot, and so you get to see like how poverty is coped with in different ways for people. But eventually, Julia still has a lot of trouble coping. She skips school. She ends up going to a bookstore and meets this boy named Connor, who, this might mean something to AJ, is from Evanston.
Hey.
So he's not a city
family.
boy.
I got a lot of
Is
Evanston.
that
For
like a
those who don't
suburb
know,
of Illinois?
it's a north suburb of Chicago,
Mm.
and it's very affluent. A lot of politicians live in Evanston, so it's a very different world. It's
the rich white people.
No, actually, surprisingly, Evanston has a very balanced people group, but it's like when I tell you these homes are like old money, like it's old money homes, like it's crazy over there. Yeah,
Yeah, there's money. So Connor does happen to be white, so she meets a rich white boy, and I keep picturing him as Dean from Gilmore Girls because we watched that recently.
Yeah,
and so that's like my point of reference right now. And so when I was reading the book, that's what I imagined him to be. I'd be curious to find out what Erika Sánchez actually meant for Connor to look like. Well, that's what was in my head.
Maybe that's what she had in mind too.
Maybe you're right. Maybe that's what it was.
Yeah, because she's around like AJ, you're my age. Like,
yeah,
I think she's in her 30s.
Mhm.
So maybe yeah. And they click right away. She's really awkward about it, really quirky, says weird stuff, but he's all for it. They click, and yeah, that's where I'm going to leave you guys as far as the plot. The themes in this, like there's a study guide at the end of this book. That's how well written it is and how deep it goes into things.
Dang, I got homework
Obviously, like,
afterwards.
Yeah, man.
I don't like reading a book and getting homework.
I got to get a homework. Who's grading this? What's the rubric?
The author is
yourself.
I like that.
And your grade, like what you get out of this is pride. No. But there's a lot of really deep themes, family secrets. Like I'm like as you grow up, you realize like there's stuff about your family for good or bad, like that you just didn't know. And
I'm very excited to read that. I bought 2 copies for me and Daniela because I know Daniela's been looking for a book to read, and so when I saw this, I looked it up, and I'm like, this actually seems really cool. So I bought 2 copies so we can read because we try to do like mini book club. I know we're dorks, whatever, but we try to do mini book club.
Awesome.
So yeah, so I'm excited.
Couple goals,
yeah,
for real.
For you. I'm excited.
Let me know what you guys think, especially Daniela, like being Mexican American. Like, I'm very curious to see like what she gets out of this. What she thinks.
Yeah.
And like for me, like I'm Guatemalan. My dad's from Guatemala. But like it's like there's a lot of similarities, and like a lot of like cousins are from Mexico. So I could still like when I was reading this, I was like, yeah, I've experienced this.
Yeah.
Another thing is obviously coming of age. Being a teenager sucks. It's hard. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Definitely sucks.
But then there's like the extra layers of like her being Mexican American. Like the expectations for her are different than if she was like 5th generation Irish.
Yeah.
And again, that's something that some people reading this will connect with and some people might not, but it's still cool to see that. And like the way like that generational trauma is dealt with culturally, as well as like the poverty factor, like how it affects mental health, and how it affects the way these kids are growing up in these Chicago neighborhoods. And then obviously there's like the immigrant experience. Her parents have really struggled a lot. And then like there's for a lot of immigrant parents, like there's this idea of like America ruined my kids. Like there's a loss of tradition and values, whereas it's like no, like it's a different culture.
Yeah.
And like I was reading that Third Culture kids book, and it talked about this. So kind of a cool nerd sociological aspect of it too.
Yeah.
My final thoughts: it's a very nuanced book. A lot of great themes from different angles. Super relatable, both if you're a teenager or if you have been a teenager, which is all of us at some point.
Not me.
But there's also some heavy topics. Like definitely want to give a trigger warning. It talks about things like sexual abuse, sexual assault, domestic violence, suicide, but in a very real, relatable way.
No.
And also, there's a film adaptation coming in the works from
really?
Netflix, and America Ferrera is going to direct it.
I was all for it until you said Netflix. I don't know,
Netflix, yeah.
man.
I'm
Anyone
still hoping,
else?
man. I'm still
Apple.
hoping it's for the
Yeah.
I
culture.
was
There could
hoping.
be
I was
some
hoping
good signs.
Apple. If Apple headed that project, I'd be more excited about it. Netflix. I don't know. We'll see.
But yeah, I'm totally, dude. I am hardcore on the bandwagon of this one. I would definitely want to check out more of Erika Sanchez's books. I'm glad AJ, you're gonna read it, and Daniela.
Yeah,
Let me know what you guys
I'll
think.
let you know.
Kate, Alex, Natty, if you end up checking it out too, let me know.
Let's do it. Let's all check it out. Speaking of other things to check out, I covered some music this week.
What'd you listen to?
Some good stuff. I got a lot of good things. I'm just gonna jump straight in. I got a lot of good things to say about this album. This is a band called Fontaines D.C. They're from
Okay.
Ireland, specifically from Dublin. I've been listening to them since, gosh, honestly, I think it was like beginning of 2020. I was just like looking for some fresh tunes, and I don't even remember how I found this band. But I heard their song "I Don't Belong" and "Hero's Death," and it just like blew me away. I was just like, oh my god, I just found the next band that I'm going to be like grossly obsessed with for the next like 10 to 50 plus years of my life. Like I just knew that I was like set with this band, and this is their third record, and it's pretty cool because like a lot of bands coming out of Ireland don't really blow up overseas. Like
Yeah.
I mean, we have like Damien Rice, and like there are Irish bands that have became popular, but it just hasn't. There hasn't been a lot lately.
It's
And
been a
like,
minute, yeah.
yeah,
You
so
too.
yeah, U2, which is what, like the 80s, so it's like
Yeah.
that's been a hot minute. Fontaines DC just dropped their record called Skinty Fia, which translates in Gaelic to the damnation of the deer, which I think is like,
I was gonna say, I was like, that sounds Gaelic.
That's a cool title then.
yeah, it's a cool title.
That could be a band name, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, like if they ever decide they don't want Fontaines DC, then maybe they can just switch to Skinty Fia. Actually, just the damnation of the deer alone sounds great.
Yeah.
What does their name mean? Because when you said Fontaines DC, I was like, oh, they're from America, right?
No, so
being all ignorant, yeah.
They were initially called the Fontaines, which I know is a reference to The Godfather. I believe it's like
okay.
I don't know all the details of that, but there was a band in LA called the Fontaines, apparently. So that's the only reason that I know of that they added DC to the end of it. But the damnation of the deer, like the power behind that message is, there was in Ireland an animal known as the Irish elk, and it was like one of the most powerful deers to walk around, and it went extinct over 4,000 years ago. And apparently one of the reasons they went extinct is their antlers became like too big that they couldn't support themselves. So they started like dying off. And I don't know, I just thought that was like such an interesting message to see. And it's cool because like this band, all of them except their guitar player moved to London to record this record, and they did what's called. Do you guys know what live to tape means?
No,
like one tape, like one take kind of thing.
Well, the second I explain it, you're going to be like, "Oh, this actually is pretty straightforward." So, recorded live to tape means that the whole band goes into the room at the same time, and they all record the tracks in one go.
Oh, okay.
Which
this is like old school.
Yeah, which used to happen a lot. And it doesn't anymore.
The Chariot.
Yeah. Or what? Or the Chariot?
The Chariot. I think their first album, or Norma Jean, their first album was like that.
Yeah, I think the Chariot. I think Long Live did that, which is a great record, by the way. But these guys, they did it in 2 weeks. There was a lot of layers to this album. There's like accordions and every type of sound you can think of, and it was just a lot. It was a lot to process because like I wasn't sure what the sound of this record was going to be. The previous ones are very like post-punk, like think like Joy Division, a little bit of The Cure. They've got like some elements from The Clash, but they kind of have like this like hypnotic sound to everything. And this record, I felt like they were just like, we're not going to hold our accents back. We're just going to like have everything as like thick and as powerful as it can be. Like there's times where I had to like look up the lyrics because I couldn't understand what the singer was saying.
Awesome.
And like I just saw them live. It was like the coolest show I've ever been to. Kate just saw them live too. So like that was another thing I wanted to throw in is like we both saw Fontaines D.C, but I saw them in LA and she saw them in Brooklyn. Right? Was it
Yes.
Brooklyn or was it
Yeah,
Manhattan?
it was in
Oh,
Brooklyn.
cool.
It was like kind of near Williamsburg. And yeah, they're on their US tour right now, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah,
And they
and it's
sold out their Brooklyn show, so they added a second one.
that's what happened in LA too. 2 shows. And
Oh.
I didn't realize I saw the second show because I was in line for merch and this like 60-year-old guy was like, he's like, yeah, did you go last night? And he had like the set list and he apparently found out about like randomly recently. And it was cool because I just like, I felt like I got to meet a lot of Irish people that like now live in LA. Like this guy said he lived in Dublin in the 90s and was just like telling me how much like the country has changed. Do you feel like you saw a lot of Irish people at your show?
No. I
No?
think mine was like, well, okay, you know what? When I was walking to the venue, actually, you know, when you like you're walking somewhere and you're
Mhm.
like in a hurry or whatever, there's people in front of you, you're trying to like weasel through the streets. There wasn't many people. It was like late, it was dark. But there was this group of like 4 guys walking in front of me, and it was that thing where it's like we were walking like the same pace. So I can't totally pass them, but I'm like right on their heels where it's like that awkward, like if you were to turn around right now, I'd smack right into you. But I couldn't get past them because they're too fast. But they were definitely at least something UK accent. I couldn't be like, oh yeah, they're totally Irish because it was like I can't really tell, but they were definitely not American. But
Yeah.
other than them, when I got to my show, which was like I think 3 times the size of the venue Alex was at, it seemed like it was just all a bunch of like American Brooklyn hipsters and cool people.
Oh, there
in
were
New York.
plenty of cool people, hipsters here too, but mixed in the crowd with very old Irish men.
And
And
I
like,
also
That's awesome.
It's pretty
I
cool.
agree with you on the fact that you cannot make out the word they're saying sometimes. Like the Irish accent of the lead singer is so thick. When he's singing, he sounds like he's just yelling and being like, ah, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, what are you saying?
but it sounds so good, so you're just like, oh my gosh, like let's hear it all. And like it's crazy, like because I couldn't. They have this song called "I Love You," and like the
Oh,
song like
yeah. I
slowly just
love you. I love
yeah,
you. I love you.
he literally
Sorry.
does that. He's like, "Oh, I love you, I love you," and then like builds up, and then like the second the music builds up, he just starts talking really,
He like
really, really
scream
fast.
sings. He's like
Yeah,
screaming talking.
and it's cool, but I had to like, I thought it was like a love song about like some girl he liked or something. So I finally looked up the lyrics, and it was like, "Oh, I love you" discusses like the falling of Irish politics since they've gotten new people in office in 2020, and then it talks about the
Oh,
housing crisis, and apparently there's a high suicide rate amongst the youth in
yeah.
Ireland. So this is him like singing, like think from like the reflection of like that he like loves the culture of Ireland and like wants to like
Man,
care for people, which is cool. But like because I
the
couldn't
cut.
You would
understand that,
never know.
Yeah,
I had to
the
read these
cut.
lyrics.
The
You can
cut.
look.
That's a deep cut. That's a very deep cut for a song. I would never think that's where it was gonna go when you're describing it. That's pretty cool.
And
Yeah,
like the only part you can really actually make out is when he's just saying "I love you, I love you." The rest of the song, any other lyric, you're like he's like saying it so fast. His accent is so thick you
Maybe
cannot make a word out.
maybe that's intentional for that kind of song. Maybe that's how he tries to
Mm.
highlight because like Alex said, he's curious like what's being said, and now you're made aware of like some of these changes that have happened in Ireland. Maybe that's part of the intention for
yeah,
those who aren't Irish, I should say. Excuse me, because I'm sure people who are Irish, they're like, yeah, you don't know what he's saying. I mean, it's pretty plain and simple, you know.
no, and I love it. And like if you listen to some of their older records, like he can like hold back his accent like when he wants to. So like
Yeah,
I definitely feel like it was intentional.
yeah.
And live he mixed all the songs differently. Like a lot of the songs were sped up. He was like taking the mic and he was like stomping it on the stage and then like battling between like the guitar player and the drummer, and he was like chucking like tambourines at the walls and stuff, and it was crazy. It was like one of the coolest shows I've seen. And like I'm just like so excited to see this band starting to like take off. Like they had a number one UK album chart and the Irish album chart, and they had just said that like they wanted to like, like even living in London now, they're like we still want to like showcase like our roots, and like like we want to show like issues that we've seen and like know of that are still happening in Ireland. And that was even like an interesting context I had with like talking to the guy that used to live in Dublin when I was at the show. He was like, because I was telling him how I went to Dublin a couple years ago and was like, this was like the best experience I've had. And he's like, yeah, you were a tourist. He's like, they're going to love you. But he's like, Irish people, they fight with each other all the time. He's like, that's what you're missing out on. So
That's amazing.
So that's what's cool. Like listening to a band in another country, you get to kind of dive in and hear a little bit about their culture from a perspective that you might not just, find on your own.
Yeah.
But yeah, would definitely recommend this record. Like, so fun. You have to see them live if you get the chance. One other like cool fact I wanted to throw into is their previous record. One thing I think that helped them kind of like blow up is I can't remember the actor's name, so like someone's gonna have to help me here. Who was the guy in Game of Thrones?
He's the guy who played Littlefinger in Game of Thrones. Peter Baelish.
Peter
But
Baelish?
That's the character's name.
Oh, Littlefinger. Sorry.
Yeah.
I know who you're talking
either
about.
way, if we can't remember his name, yeah, he played Littlefinger in Game of Thrones. He was
His
huge
name
role.
is Aidan Gillian.
Aidan Gillian?
Yes.
Doesn't sound Irish at all.
Yeah, not Irish at all. He lives in Ireland. He found out about this band, like, I don't know how. I think he just found it on his own. And he like contacted the guys and it was just like, hey, I want to be in your music video. So they like made a music video with him, and I don't even know if he paid, like if he charged them, and I think that's so cool.
That's awesome. That's
it was like
cool.
2020. It's like right after Game of Thrones was out, so like I feel like he was kind of in his prime of like being on the news, and now he's like, I'm just gonna hang out with these cool Irish guys.
That's
awesome.
I love that, dude. That's
yeah.
awesome.
Fontaines D.C. Skinny Fia, like debuted on Partition Records, which is like a really cool kind of indie label. Check it out. Play every song like in one go if you can. That's the best way to listen to it.
And then pull up Genius so you get a real good reference of what's being said.
Yeah, pull up Genius so you can understand the lyrics.
That's awesome. Guys, I watched a movie, as I said earlier. I've watched a lot of movies. I wrestled. I watched a lot of movies. I watched everything. Wait, what's that movie called? Everything, Everywhere,
all at once.
Yeah, I watched.
You watched
Firestarter. Yeah, I did. I watched a bunch of movies. You know what I'm going to talk about today? Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
Let's go.
Nice.
Yes, yeah. So if you guys remember, the first Sonic movie had a very rough start. The studio presented in a trailer the ugliest looking thing I think we've ever seen in our lives, and it was just nightmare fuel. They went back to the shop. They paid a studio a lot of money to kind of fix the Sonic image, which sad story, that studio is actually out of business now. So what a shame, right? These people single-handedly saved an entire franchise only to then be thrown to the wolves. But the first movie came out, I think a lot of people were ready to just, absolutely dunk on the movie. But surprisingly, it wasn't bad. They made the choice of making Sonic a kid. And I think that's probably the most likable part of the movie, that he's just a kid and he's lonely because he's not in his home planet. He has no friends. And I loved that dynamic of the first movie. So obviously, right, with sequels, we always say it's always very hard to make a sequel because you have to do what made you successful, but do it differently. And so this movie, they take a different approach, and I really liked it. I really thought it worked, where the perspective is like, okay, Sonic now has these fake parents and they love him and he has a home and everything, but he still doesn't have friends, right? And I think that's such a relatable thing because, especially if you're a single child, you can't really be friends with your parents. That's hard, right? So the whole movie is about Sonic meeting Tails and Knuckles. Tails,
I love Knuckles, my favorite.
Yeah, well, okay, so yeah, they were probably, I cannot remember who played Tails, and that's really gonna drive me nuts. But Tails was introduced into the Sonic franchise, and Knuckles, played by Idris Elba, was also introduced into the movie. And the theme of the movie, it's very simple. Dr. Robotnik, which Jim Carrey, by the way, is born to play Dr. Robotnik. I love that in this movie, basically at the end of the first movie, Jim Carrey's Dr. Robotnik, spoiler alert, gets thrown into another dimension. The dimension he gets sent to, by the way, is a Nintendo reference. He gets sent to the Mushroom Kingdom, or an area
Nice.
of the Mushroom Kingdom. And so, like, but I like the joke that, like, because he's eaten mushrooms for like months, that he's gone crazy. It's really funny.
No.
And so he comes back like insane. And basically the whole part of the movie is that they're trying to get some emerald that gives power, whatever. And Dr. Robotnik is lying to Knuckles to try to pit Knuckles against Sonic. And Sonic is trying to be his friend. And so that's really what the movie's about. It's about friendship. It's about Sonic gaining the trust of not just one, but two friends. And I think Idris Elba knocks it out of the park as Knuckles. He almost plays it kind of like Dave Bautista plays Drax from
They were
Guardians
going
of
to
the
say
Galaxy.
he just plays as, like, he acts as Dave Bautista.
Well,
Knuckles. I was
this,
like,
well, I never knew this. You know,
like
growing up.
Here.
Yeah, yeah. No, I never knew this. I never knew like all the Sonic friends had like different like characteristics. Like I didn't know Tails was like the smart one and Knuckles was the strong but dumb one. So that was also fun learning in this movie because like Knuckles isn't very smart, and so like he's really strong, and like and Tails is not sure of himself, but they're all kids, and I it's always funny. First of all, funny to hear Idris Elba talk, but also he's a kid. That's just a weird thing, but it's also kind of funny. And like I said, Jim Carrey does a great job. I think they also did a really good thing of making this movie about Sonic himself. The first movie kind of really leaned into James Marsden from Smallville. If you guys anyone remember Smallville?
Yes.
He played the OG Superman from Smallville. So
and he's in that Disney movie.
He's in
Ever After.
Yes, thank you.
I forgot about that movie.
Yeah, he did fine in the first movie. His character is here, but they kind of really focus on Sonic, and I think that worked in my opinion. Because remember, guys, this is a kids movie, so it's for kids. There are some goofy scenes that I'm just like, okay, this is clearly made for kids, but I think that's fine. I think it's, everything doesn't have to be made for a 30-year-old, right? Or a 40-year-old, or 50-year-old. Like, so I thought that was fine. I think if you have kids or you enjoy watching kid movies, I think this actually did a really good job. Because I really bought that Sonic is making friends with Tails. That was really fun too. Tails is like this very timid, very if for anyone who watches One Piece, kind of like a Usopp character, where they're always afraid, but because their friends are in danger, that they're gonna like suck it up and like do the brave thing because they care more about their friends. Like I love that kind of stuff. That's awesome. That's a really cool thing for kids to learn as well.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think like the sweetest scene is when they're running away from Knuckles, Sonic, and Tails, and they get all wet and they're sitting next to a fire, and Sonic gives Sonic gives Tails a blanket, and then he falls asleep next to Tails, and then Tails uses his tail to cover Sonic. I was just like, oh, my heart. So I was like, that is really sweet. That is really sweet. And then I also love how it ends. And this was part of the movie.
You can't give us the ending. What if we're gonna go watch it?
I'm not gonna give the ending, but there is a reference to a very sad scene from the first movie that they make into a very happy scene in this movie. And so like, when you watch it from that perspective, watching the first movie and the second movie, you're like, damn, they did a really good job. Like, building a narrative across two movies that didn't do that stupid thing where they're like, oh, but wait till the next one, that kind of thing. Like, you can watch each movie and it feels like a contained movie, but the backstory behind like the characters, I'm just like, oh, I didn't know that. That's actually kind of interesting. It wasn't delivered in a ham-fisty way. It was actually, some of it was set up from the first movie.
What a funny word, ham-fisty.
Yeah, ham-fisted. Overall, I think it was solid. Like, it's not the greatest movie you've ever watched, obviously. It's a movie about a hedgehog and a squirrel and a echidna, which I don't know what an echidna is. But that word's used a lot in this movie.
Wait, what?
Knuckles
is that a real thing?
Knuckles is an echidna. I don't know what that is.
Never heard that word in my life.
Never heard that. I think it's a real animal. because they're
It
all
is.
based on real animals. Okay,
It's
don't know what that is.
It's
It looks like a hedgehog.
yeah, it's also called the spiny anteater, and it's
See,
Australian.
I'm learning a lot about it.
But it's spelled
Because
ECH. So like I was typing with an A at first.
Oh, and it's
Yeah,
like a platypus in that it is a mammal, yet it lays eggs.
This thing's wild.
that's so weird. So like they, that's where Knuckles comes from. He comes from a people of Echidna warriors. It's wild, but it's also
Wait.
presented in a.
You have to guess how old they are real quick. How long do you think these things last?
I mean, if I had to guess, I would probably say, because they live in like the desert, I'm assuming, right? I would probably say like maybe like 80 to 100 years.
In one lifespan for an animal?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I was like, not
Like
that long, but it says 15
Like
to 40 years, which I thought was pretty impressive.
That's still a lot. That's still a lot. Yeah. So, because I'm like, usually desert animals, for whatever reason, live longer. I don't know. Suffice to say, I think most people would enjoy the Sonic movie. Even if you didn't watch the first one, you really don't have to watch the first one to like this one or to get it. It's only an hour 30, which, as you guys know, anything over 2 hours, it immediately no. You gotta be Godfather-esque like writing for me to buy into your 2-hour movie. I'm so sick and tired of watching 2-hour movies. In comparison, Firestarter was also 90 minutes, and I felt every minute of that movie. Holy cow, it was slow. So like 2-hour movies, they're a no-go for me, but this was under 2 hours, so that's like the sweet spot for movies for me. So I say I think everyone should give it a shot. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised as long as you remember it's made for kids. All you weirdos who complain about, I don't know, where Sonic gets his powers from. At some point, something happens to Sonic that I'm like, I think this is for people who are like too deep into Sonic lore. I'm like, I don't really know what's happening, but I think this is cool if you love Sonic. So for those type of people, it
sounds cool to me. I love Sonic, so
yeah. I mean, I never played the games as a kid, so
I played all the games.
So you may enjoy it more because I feel like like I said, I think they do a good job of like referencing things that
I watched the TV show.
Okay. So yeah. So I do know for a fact that they did use a line from the TV show in this movie when he says, "I gotta go fast." I know that's from the TV show, and he says that in the movie. So I'm like, there's all these like Easter eggs that I'm like, if you love Sonic, I think you're gonna really like this movie because there's a lot of these things where I'm like, I don't know what this crystal thing does, but it seems cool. And it seems important.
It looks cool.
So yeah, I will say
I heard a lot of good things about this.
Yeah, well, my only complaint is that it has Death Beam of Doom. Yeah,
purple laser in the
sky. The laser in the sky. I'm like, so close, so close. Overall, I like the movie. I think you guys should watch it. And I think it's Paramount that is the studio for Sonic. You've done a good job with this. Because video game movies, well, video game movies they don't have a good track record. So
that's true.
Yeah, we'll see.
I'm definitely gonna check this out. I've heard good things, like surprisingly good things. You got me, AJ. I will check it out.
Check it out, guys. Yeah,
well for it.
Guys,
I've heard good things too from. There's a podcaster I listen to. She's a comedian, Nicole Byer. And she was saying this.
I love her.
She's so amazing. Funny. And she said this is like one of her favorite movies ever. And she was like, I know it's for kids. She's like, but I loved it. And she's like, it's all about friendship. And she said it made her cry.
That's exactly how I felt when I watched this movie. I was like, yo, them making Sonic a kid was a choice decision because it helps frame all the things he does. And it's like, oh, he's a kid. He doesn't know any better. And I think that works. I think it works a lot. So kudos to Paramount. I think it's Paramount.
It's Paramount.
It is? Okay. Yeah. Kudos to them. They did a good job, guys. They did a good job with that.
Kudos to Paramount. Kudos to Sonic. Kudos to everyone on the podcast today. I think that's it, right? We're good. We're good to go.
Is that all the kudos you got?
Yeah, that's all the kudos. Let's close this.
We're all out.
Close this up. Thanks for listening. Keep subscribing, checking us out on every social you can. We love hearing feedback, so comment whenever you want. We're starting to post a little more on TikTok now, so you might see us present on other socials outside of just Instagram and Twitter. And don't forget that Jacob Free, who was in our one of our recent recordings, We're giving away one of his comics soon, and it ends 5/31. So you better jump in on that. That's it for today. I was about to say that's all, folks, but I don't want to get sued, so we're gonna censor that out. Yeah, that's all, folks.
The Bandwagon Fan Podcast is hosted by Josh Jimenez, Alex Melgosa, and me, AJ Soy. Our show is produced by Kate Smith and edited by your boy, AJ. Our social media is managed by Natalia Kokulia, and our theme song, Lush Waves, is provided to us by Taylor Lewin of _audio. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.